But then last year I was going to the DPRK. So then I'm like, if I'm going to the DPRK, I should make a music video there because it's not like every day I can go to the DPRK. So then I made that song, Rumors and Slanders, 流言蜚语.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Silk and Steel podcast. I'm your host, Carl Zha. Today we have a very special guest. We have Mr. Xiangyu, who is a Taiwanese American rapper. Can you talk about your trip to DPRK? And what are your impressions?
You know how like in the media, how they make Korea look all gray
Yes.
and just drab and really depressing?
Yes.
No, Pyongyang's really colorful.
Wow.
They have like all these pastel colors like on their like residential buildings. It's definitely worth the trip if you have the time and the money. It's and this is the thing, if you whatever preconceived notions you have over there, I feel like most people will try to look for evidence to confirm their biases.
Yes.
So then like liberals go in and then they'll see how, for example, the roads connecting the cities are bad, or that maybe, okay, let's face it, they don't have first world living standards, but then they'll just attribute everything to like the Kim family instead of like, for example, US sanctions or years of imperialist aggression against their country, etc., etc. And
people don't realize North Korea actually had better living standard than South Korea up to 1970s.
Yeah, and like the 1970s, like a lot of they got like injected with a lot of money from abroad because, okay, one, they had like war reparations from Japan, and then like Japan also gave them like their automaking technology as like reparation, and also the US gave them a lot of money for fighting in the Vietnam War for them.
Yes, and that's another story.
And the US did so much things because at first the US was like, okay, we're just gonna let them go do laissez-faire and then just treat them like any other client state. But then South Korea just remained a shithole, and then they were like, okay, this is bad because the North is actually doing well. If we don't do what we can to boost the South's economy, then the people are going to start being disillusioned with capitalism, and they're going to start turning towards like the North. So then there was also that. That's why I call these places like the front lines of the Cold War. That's where, because like like during the Cold War, the U.S. and Soviet Union never like really fought directly. It was always like proxy wars, like in Afghanistan or in Vietnam, and then I think in places like and Korea, but then I think in places like South Korea and Taiwan, okay, there were no like direct confrontations for like many decades, but then that's where like ideological warfare was the strongest.
Yep.
So I think Taiwan and to a lesser extent South Korea are great success stories of like U.S. cultural hegemony.
And the funny thing is when South Korea initially has a lot of U.S. economic advisors, and the advised South Korean dictator Park. What's his full name? I'm just gonna call him
Park Chung-hee.
Yeah. So the American advisors actually advised South Korean government to concentrate on light industries, like textiles, making cheap shoes, stuff like that, because supposedly that will leverage, South Korea's cheap labor. That's South Korea's competitive advantage. But
that stuff's good for capitalists. Like if you're just trying to make a quick profit, that's much more. You make much more money in much shorter time than like investing heavily in heavy industry.
Yep, and but the South Korean dictator
Park
Chung-hee said, no, I have to compete with North Korea, right? I want to have a steel industry, I want to have automotive industry, I want to have a shipbuilding industry,
and then he got killed.
But no, but Americans are like, you're crazy. What are you gonna, if you put all this investment into steel industry, how is South Korea gonna consume all these steel? Like South Korea was an agricultural economy. But one thing actually led to another. Basically they adopted a state-directed investment, right? So they built their steel industry, and that's one reason. Like a lot of if you go into a lot of Korean restaurants in the United States, you will see they use metal chopsticks and metal spoons and everything metal bowl, right?
Yeah.
That started from that period because to support its own domestic steel industry, they literally, like were promoting use all these everything made out of steel, right?
Yeah.
And then, but from the Korean steel industry came the Korean automotive industry, the Korean shipbuilding industry. I mean, that's how South Korea eventually became one of the largest economy in the
Yeah.
world. I think believe right now it's either the number 10 or number 11th, something around
If
there.
you
But
want
like
development, you need the means of production to make more means of production, not just the means of production to make cheap shoes.
exactly, because South Korea got where it is today explicitly because it didn't listen to these Harvard trained American economists who told them to stick to making shoes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a little side note. We'll get back to our main topic now.
Yeah.
DPRK.
So my trip to the DPRK, I wanted to go there because I have family history there. Because my grandfather is from Shandong and he was part of the group with his brother who 闯关东,
Yes.
which is like I don't know how to say that in English, but basically you have like a lot of like Chinese people from like the central areas going to the northeast because
This was in the late 19th century, early 20th century when the Qing imperial government finally lifted the ban on Han Chinese migrating to area of Manchuria. Because for a long time, like the the Manchu rulers of Qing dynasty, imposed a limit on Manchuria. They didn't want any Han immigration into Manchuria, their homeland. But in the late 19th century, when things got so bad, when both Russia and Japan were encroaching on Manchuria, that's when the Qing government decided, okay, well, we'll finally lift the ban, and a lot of Han Chinese peasants were fleeing famines and civil wars, conflict in like Shandong, especially from Shandong and Hebei. They
yeah, yeah.
went to Manchuria, like millions of people, and because that's also was coincided the time when trains were first built into Manchuria from China, so people were able to just board the trains and go to Manchuria to seek a new life. So yeah, so
Yeah.
so your grandparents were that way.
Yeah, my grandfather and his brother. My grandfather was actually born during the Qing dynasty, like the final year, because he had my dad when he was 50. But that's another topic. So then he did that, and then like when he was over there, I mean, that was the Northeast was already like kind of under Japanese occupation.
Yeah,
So then he and his older brother found their way to Korea, which was still one at that point.
and also under occupation.
Yeah, yeah. But then my grandfather made his way to Seoul, whereas his brother stayed in Chagang province in this place called like Huichun, Huichuan.
Wait, wait. So your grandfather's brother stayed in North Korea?
Oh, he eventually made it back to China, but he was in North Korea when the war broke out, and he almost died because his whole town got bombed.
Wow.
Yeah, he and his family were hiding in this like ravine or like valley, and the PLA found them, and the PVA, the Chinese People's Volunteer Army found them, and they were like, okay, it is really unsafe here. You should go back to China. So then they walked all the way to Shenyang.
Wow, that is a
Yeah,
long walk. I
yeah,
mean, like people for my audience who not familiar with this part of the Korean War history. I mean, North Korea was extensively bombed to the point where they kind of ran out of the target, the bombable target. Like America, that was the most extensive bombing campaign by United States after World War II is against North Korea.
yeah. So then that's kind of why I wanted to go see the North because I have family history there, and plus, I mean, my grandmother also lived in the North for a little bit when it was still like still occupied by Japan.
Hmm.
Obviously, like the North Korea I saw and the North Korea they saw were completely different, but I still
Oh yeah.
wanted to see it and really just kind of interact with the people there and just see things. So I went to Sinizhou, Pyongyang, uh, Wonsan, Hamhung, and then I made a second trip to Nason. I also went to Kaesong. So then I saw like many different places in the country. I actually saw Kim Jong Un in person
Oh,
from like
really? Wait, how did that happen?
September 9th. Is their national day, and September 9th, 2018 was the 70th anniversary of the founding of the DPRK. And that was also the opening date for the mass games, the like the mass gymnastics and yeah, those performances like in the Mayday Stadium, the largest stadium in the world. And since it was opening day and was such a big holiday, Kim Jong Un was in the audience. So he sat like 300 meters away from me.
Wow.
Yeah. But because he was there, I couldn't bring my camera and I couldn't bring anything in because security was very high.
Sure, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Um, so okay, I know the famine is actually many years in the past, but many English speaking audience might not know that. So
Yeah.
when you went to North Korea, did you see anybody looking famished?
Not really. I think in the countryside, some people seemed like they didn't eat as well, but they were like nowhere near like famine levels. Like, they talk candidly about the 1990s. Like, yeah, there was a famine. It was really bad. We cut down trees and then like cooked the tree bark and stuff like that. But I mean,
Yeah.
um,
One of the reason also for the 1990s, early 90s famine was that North Korea for the longest time relied on Soviet Union as a trading partner. Basically, Soviet Union was one of its top export market. In return, North Korea was getting fuel, particularly
yeah,
I think gasoline and petroleum products. So the
yes.
collapse of the Soviet Union was just devastating to the North Korean economy because they were
Part of shock therapy was that Russia wasn't allowed to provide any more of that stuff to North Korea.
exactly.
So then, without fuel, with your industrial base, your industry can't run, and your tractors in the countryside can't run. So then your country's at a standstill.
And also no
And then they also had two floods and a drought, and so then out of desperation, they tried to join the World Bank and the IMF, but then I think the U.S. vetoed their bid under Clinton.
Yeah, and also the North Korea, unlike South Korea, North Korea is very mountainous, and most of the arable
90%.
yeah, most arable farmland ended up in South Korea. So
Yeah.
North Korea had to rely on use of a lot of use of chemical fertilizers, to sustain its agriculture. And of course, with cutting off of petroleum products from Soviet Union, that meant no chemical fertilizers. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So then you go there, you just kind of notice how they try to get around sanctions. Like they have green energy everywhere nowadays because of like limited fuel. Like you go to like apartment complexes, every balcony has like this giant solar panel, and then you have like the building I stayed in Pyongyang was powered by geothermal and solar energy, nothing else.
Now you went in from like a
Yeah,
organized tour from China, right? Okay, so that's basically the only way for anybody
you
to
can
go
set
to
up a
North
private
Korea right
tour.
now, right?
You'll still have two Korean guides, but it'll be more expensive. But then you're a lot more free to like plan out what you want to do.
Right, 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 right. But so the fact that you're American, that didn't present a problem to go on the tour.
I use my I use my Taiwan passport.
Okay, okay. So, but okay. So I because I was gonna ask you like because I know there are Americans who go on those tours, and
Oh, I know a few Americans who go in and out because of their jobs.
oh,
So yeah,
what do they do?
tour guides or like other sort of like cultural exchange or like they work at yeah. There's different cases.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
so, yeah, I know before, that's one way for Americans to go to North Korea is go through these organized tours. I don't know,
yeah.
with a recent change in the State
They
Department.
renewed they renewed the ban.
Oh, they did.
Fucking auto warm beer.
Okay, of course. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about more about your album and your music. And so you got around, we already talked about how you got around to like rap music and stuff. When did you actually start to make music on your own?
Okay, this is a funny story. How I became a Chinese rapper. So around the time I wanted to practice like reading and writing Chinese was also around the time I started scribbling random like rhymes in school, like when I'm in the classroom, like because I just like high school was boring to me. So then most of the time I was just kind of daydreaming and yeah. So I would just write things down, and then one day I decided, okay, this is the first time I'm making this public. So I wanted to have a microphone. I wanted to record my stuff, but then like I didn't have a job back then. So how did I get the money? My school was actually switching buildings. So like they were getting rid of the old building and getting a new building. So then they were moving things, and a lot of things got lost. So then what I did was I started stealing the TI-83 and TI-84 calculators and selling them on eBay. And then I used that money to buy my first microphone. And then I didn't know how to make beats or do any of that stuff back then. But then I just downloaded beats and started rapping over them. And like I didn't expect anyone to pay attention to them because it was just me messing around for fun as a kid. But then one of the songs was so bad that it became viral.
Okay, you have to give us a link.
It's not on there anymore because I got into so many flame wars that with that account when I was still like 17 that the whole account got deleted.
Oh man, man, for
Yeah,
deleted from YouTube.
yeah. They got rid of the account, and I think those songs are on my old hard drive, and I'm just not motivated enough to go find them.
I
But
understand. I understand.
yeah. So then that went viral, and then I got a lot of hate, and like I was only 17, but then like there was like this hip hop blog in Taiwan called 饶舌狂爱之家.
Hmm.
And then like it was run by like a 30-year-old, and he was just like saying like very like really fucked up comments they were pretty much like bullying like a 17-year-old, which I think is pretty low. I think it's okay for like like a peer to bully a peer like on the internet. I mean, it's still bad, but it's understandable. But if you're like 30 and you're like bullying like a 17-year-old online, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I think it's pretty sad.
Yeah.
But then
Well,
that just motivated me to prove that I wasn't like as that I wanted to prove that I had potential. So then I was like, okay, what started off as just like a fun hobby became something I took more seriously. So then I started taking rap more seriously, and then I made my first EP when I was 18. But then I was still a liberal back then, so I just yeah. So the content was pretty
okay.
bad.
So when did
Another
you?
video I got another video that went viral that's still online
Uh-huh.
is though it's not public is this song called 野格炸弹. So I actually popularized Jaeger bombs in Taiwan.
Okay, that's great.
I made a song about Jaeger bombs when I was 18, and I wanted to I was still like a little fuck boy. So then I saw like these rap videos with like I wanted to be like cool like the rappers like have like like a whole entourage, and then
We all do.
like girls and all that stuff. So then it's like it's kind of bad thinking back now. But then a young impressionable 18-year-old. So then I made a video, and then it became viral. It has like 8 million views, right? No, is it 8 million? No, not million. It's 800,000 views because I made it private for a while, and then I made it like hidden
Why?
because it's embarrassing.
Oh, come on! Now I want to see it. No, no.
Okay, I'll show you this video.
Okay.
Okay, so then I did that when I was 18, and then I made my EP, and then but then I started suffering from this severe writer's block because at that point I didn't know what to write about anymore. I hadn't become a communist yet, and then I'm like, okay, what do I write about? Because a lot of the rap that was out there, like that's more mainstream, is just like I guess in Chinese what we call 大屌哥.
You gotta explain that for our English audience.
大屌哥 literally means big dick song, but what it is like it's just songs boasting about like your wealth, like your fame, your like your your like I guess
Basically,
sexual exploits
basically
and like that sort of stuff.
standard rap music, right?
Nowadays, yes, yes. And then I just that just wasn't me. I realized that because like I mean I was like a college kid who, you know. So then that was around the time when I just kind of pushed it to the side. I still wanted to do it, but I just had no I had no motivation whatsoever. I had no inspiration. So then yeah, that was when I started taking studying communism and stuff like that more serious. Like a few years like after that, like during those few years I started like reading more about I started reading more. I got into the habit of just reading more, and I wanted to improve my Chinese, so I started reading like books in Chinese as well.
What are some of your or some of these books that you found really inspirational?
Well, not really inspirational, but I mean, like this was also the time I was trying to understand like Taiwan and like the overall like Chinese politics, and I found some of the books my dad had, like especially from like this one author named Liao.
Oh yes, he's a
Yeah,
Taiwanese fire.
he's quite a character.
Yeah, he's a famous like a contrarian, and he's famous firebrand. That's the name.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff with him I agree with, but now as a communist, I also don't agree with
Yes,
like a good amount of his stuff.
yeah,
But yeah, he's really good at like pointing out the
yeah,
hypocrisies of the U.S. and like Taiwan's status as like a client state. He's really good for
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So then, yeah, and then eventually I got to reading Mao and in Chinese. What had happened was I took I think this goes back to an earlier question that you asked me, and then we got off topic. But I had a developmental econ course taught by an Ethiopian professor.
Hmm.
So then, like developmental econ, we pretty much talk about the different experiences of different countries, and obviously, the reforms and opening up in China were one of them. But then they didn't really talk much about Mao. So then on the last day, he was like, "So who do you guys think was good, like Deng Xiaoping or Mao?" And then everyone was like, "Of course, it's Deng Xiaoping. Mao fucked up the whole country, and Deng single handedly saved China." And he was like, "Well, if you should really think about it because." What did Deng Xiaoping have to work with? He had a he had a highly educated workforce
Yes,
that before Mao was largely illiterate.
yeah,
He started listing these things, and he said that like had it not been for Mao, like Deng's reforms wouldn't have been possible to begin with, regardless of whether you think they're good or bad. He would have had nothing to work
yeah.
with.
I mean, that's one thing people who only have a superficial understanding of recent Chinese history don't get is that I mean Deng Xiaoping literally came from Mao. Like you cannot disconnect Mao's legacy from Deng Xiaoping. These are two like it's not like a break. It's not like there was a clean break in 1976 after the end of the Cultural Revolution. It was like what Deng Xiaoping did. It came
I think there are multiple paths that they could have chosen at that point, but then none of those paths would have been possible without like
exactly.
the previous 30
Exactly.
years. I think is what you're trying to
That's
say.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the reasons Deng Xiaoping decided, made a decision not to denounce Mao altogether. Instead of he gave that 70%, 30%, 30%, 70% good, 30% bad judgment, right? I mean, like uh, I think I can agree with that. Go ahead.
So I mean, yeah. So then my professor was like, yeah, and then he was just like, well, I like Mao. I think you guys should try to understand him before you just go along with like seeing him as a villain. So then I mean, eventually I started reading that. It was around like that year I was reading things like Engels' socialism from Utopia into Scientific, and I also tried to read Marx, but then I think Marx is a little bit more difficult to read just because his language is a lot more
Mhm.
dry. So then I kind of put that to the side. I started reading Lenin because like people on the internet said I should read Lenin. And then I started reading Stalin because I was like, oh, there's so much hype about Stalin, but as I realized from the past, like I've been lied about so many things, I figured maybe I was lied to about Stalin being like this bloodthirsty tyrant. And now I like Stalin. So So I studied Stalin. I had to relearn a lot of history. And then I read Mao. So I read Mao in Chinese. I read some of like Lenin and some of Stalin, as well as Marx and Engels in Chinese, just so I know like the terminology in
Mm.
Chinese. But Mao I read in Chinese most of the time, unless I'm trying to like, unless I'm trying, I want to know like how certain things are translated into English, and then I might look up the English translations. But I only have physical copies of the Chinese versions for Mao, and
I
yeah, that
highly,
was
yeah, I do highly recommend anybody who is interested, learning about modern Chinese history, to read Mao. Even for those people who the critiques of Mao, like you can, how can you criticizing something if you don't even understand it, right? So
yeah,
read
yeah,
Mao.
yeah. No investigation, no right to speak.
Exactly. So no matter.
This is what I tell like nowadays, like anti-communists. I'm like, okay, I'm not trying to tell you to think this or that. I don't want you to agree with me, but clearly you don't understand where I'm coming from, and you just think you have an understanding of things you clearly don't understand. So why not take the time to understand it, so you don't keep on resorting to strawman argument? Like people think that communism is like a hippie commune, for example. Like, oh, everyone does. I'm like, no, that's not that's not Marx at all. And they're like, well, no country was ever socialist because like they'll bring up a bunch of stupid reasons that clearly demonstrate that they haven't read like anything by like
It's the same
that
with
clearly it
people.
demonstrates that they don't understand the actual views of
It's the
communists.
same with people. A lot of people talking about China in the West, right? I mean, like just talking
Yeah.
to them for like less than a minute, I realized they probably never been to China. They don't understand China, but they have very strong opinions about China. It's like, God, why am I wasting my time with you? You're just talking about your idea of China that's in your head. You're not talking. You're not even talking about a real thing, right?
Oh, but this goes to an important topic because part of why I really wanted to understand my roots was like as a kid. I mean, the first time I went to mainland China was in 2005. But before then, like growing up, like you have so many kids just asking so many stupid questions about like China in general, like oh, who's like the current emperor, or like do you or then like when we learn about China, you just make those like stupid like those triangle hats, like oh, this is what Chinese people wear. And then like we had a little like history segment on China like when I was in third grade, and like everything was like wrong.
I mean, I even remember like this is in Caltech, right, where I went to college. We do like wall mural painting every year in our student dorms. So like one of the guy, I mean, he's actually pretty cool guy. Even progressive. Like he was painting people on the wall, like one representing each race, I guess, right? But for the Chinese guy, he gave him the Fu Manchu mustache and the freaking
Triangle hat.
and the totally like the really 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 slant eye, like the totally cartoon character version. I'm like, what the
It's
fuck? Why
like
everybody
is it
else
like
look normal, but the freaking Asian guy is a freaking character? This is bullshit.
so it's like
I
in
mean,
was it straight out of South Park?
go ahead.
Was it straight out of South Park, like the Chinese guy?
Yeah, I mean, literally, like literally South Park depiction of Chinese. I'm like, what the fuck, man? It's like you can't even claim you never saw Chinese people. You're in fucking Caltech, like why do you do this? Bullshit.
Yeah.
And but this is even like Caltech, right? Like one of the uh, top places of higher education in the United States, people are still, you can't say they're not well educated, but it happens.
That's what I realized. Like, with the more educated you are, you know more things. But that's one of the contradictions of capitalist society is, you're also more indoctrinated. You're also more, you're also more indoctrinated by the system at the same
It's
time. So then you have like people who don't have education. They're usually not as indoctrinated, but then oftentimes they lack the language, the vocabulary, or whatever
yes.
to, or the knowledge to fully analyze what they're seeing. But they see a lot more things than like the more educated people. Whereas more educated people, they have all of that, but then they're also very indoctrinated. So then it's very hard to break out of
Yeah,
this.
Mark Twain said, right, if you don't read newspaper, you're uninformed. if you read newspaper, you are misinformed. I mean,
That's very true.
yeah. And when it comes to China, I mean, like most people in the West, I say their literal knowledge of China is from the news media, which present a very distorted view. And even with some Americans who or Westerners who do end up making China, they still try to view China with that preconceived notion they have of China, like how the people you describe that goes to DPRK, right? Like
Yeah,
people do
yeah.
the same thing. They already try to find evidence to support their preconceived view of China, and of course they find them. When you look for
For
it, yeah,
example, like there was be like Chinese people are not very creative. That's like one stereotype. So then they'll go to China, they'll find someone who's not creative. I mean, it's pretty easy to find people who aren't creative anywhere.
yeah. I like to say, China is an elephant, right? Like people understanding, basically we're all kind of blind man feeling up the elephant, trying to get the whole picture. But amazingly, the media, especially the Western media, they always go for the elephant's ass to show you all the shit that's coming out of it. I mean, you can't say that's false. Yes, they are presenting a part of China, but remember, that's only part of China you get to see if that's only source you have. That, yeah,
Yeah. So then there's also so then that was like part of my political development, just learning all of this stuff. And then I think because I like rap, a lot of it just got reflected in my music. And I also really wanted to introduce people in Taiwan to all these alternative views that you mentioned. That I think this kind of ties everything that we mentioned before together about like how the U.S. media can't like lie about America as easily, but then in Taiwan they can because they don't live in America. But then they also believe everything else about them, about like about other countries by like I'm not really wording this well. It's yeah, but you know what I mean. So then
America basically have a cultural hegemony all over the world, right? I mean, like
yeah.
it's not just limited to Taiwan as well. I mean, I see this even in mainland
Oh
China.
yeah, yeah, but on a different level, on a much different level, because mainland China people there, like even like with mainland Chinese liberals, for example, they have a better understanding of the fact that U.S. hegemony does exist and that a lot of what they consume is like will reflect that. People in Taiwan just kind of see that like it's kind of like what Antonio Gramsci said, like ideology is like water to a fish. Like if you've never left it, you don't realize that that's water.
Yeah.
And then in Taiwan, it's just always been liberalism, liberalism, liberalism. Whereas there's much more going on in the mainland in this regard, like ideological battles for the past like 100 years.
Yeah.
Eh,
It's still going on today.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So then a lot of my rap is just me wanting to raise awareness about these things. But then at the same time, I'm like, you know, a lot of times part of rap is just preaching to the choir and getting people to be like, oh yeah, he's saying what's up. But then I hope that part of it can also educate people about certain things. Like for my previous album, I had that song, like Your So-Called Freedom and Democracy. And it's just like, it's a story written from the point of view of like an Afghan person, I guess like from their childhood to their adulthood. And talking about how the progressive government was overthrown by the U.S. because the U.S. didn't like the fact that it leaned towards the Soviets, and then how it was pretty much the U.S. that created a power vacuum that gave rise to the Taliban because it supported the Mujahideen, that sort of stuff. But then at the same time, I also get a lot of like stupid comments saying that, well, like you're really shitting on democracy, like we fought so hard, like America and Britain and like more recently Taiwan have fought so hard for democracy and you're just throwing that all under the bus. And I'm like,
Oh
do you not
God.
understand what I'm saying? Like, is my Chinese that bad?
Oh, so these comments are in Chinese?
Yeah. These comments are in Chinese. I'm just kind of paraphrasing. And then they also like my music video and like the DPRK also have like stupid comments about like how no, it's okay for the US to have nukes because the US isn't a rogue state and doesn't threaten them. Whereas like the DPRK, I'm like only the US has ever used nukes on like a civilian population.
Population.
So like fuck you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of like an anomaly even in like hip hop in Taiwan.
Oh, I can
And
imagine.
like for yeah, but for some reason like I have like some sort of like a status just because I don't know. Part of it is just because people are like, "Wow, you improved so much." Because I started off like with the viral like failures, and then I wanted to prove myself. So then people see the improvement, so they're like, "Wow, that's pretty impressive." But then another part is I think I'm just no one else is saying what I'm saying so far. I wish that weren't the fact. I wish there were many other rappers who like made it so that I didn't really feel the need to continue making music just because it takes some of the pressure off of me to deliver like um deliver material that I feel is like decent enough because it's always like a challenge of saying like okay I want to do better than before, I want to get these points across, I want to get that point across. And because like in a rap song you have like 2 or 3 verses, you can't write a whole book, you have to like really it's an art of like picking out the points you want to get across and like sparking just the right amount of curiosity for people to like look for more information. That's also why I call this album 星星之火because yeah, right now I'm like the only communist rapper in Taiwan. But then I also want my music to be the spark to get more people to do like further investigations. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And of course,
Yeah,
星星之火, the spark that's is from a reference to what Mao said, right? 星星之火可以燎原. Or actually,
yeah,
Mao originally took it from the Chinese history, but
yeah.
what Mao.
Most of his quotes are like that. Honestly, he just popularized them to the rest of the
Yes,
world.
yes. Which
Like I don't think he invented like women hold up half the sky. I don't think he invented that. He
oh, I
just
have to Google search that. But yeah, but original he's saying was 星星之火可以燎原. A single spark can light up the whole prairie. So
yeah.
I do hope you. I mean, I can see you're making some impact. Your last album, Rumors and Slanders about North Korea, it had a 17K views. So that's pretty respectable.
Yeah, I was also like getting interviews because what really happened was, with my music, mainstream's not really going to cover me at all.
No.
But then as a joke last year, I submitted my album for the Golden Indie Music Awards in Taiwan. And the
Hmm.
Golden Indie Music Awards is like it's part of the Taiwan's Ministry of Culture. It's
Yeah,
organized by them. It's like the indie version of the Golden Melody Awards.
yeah.
So then I'm like, okay, yeah, it's not gonna make it in. I just kind of submitted and I just kind of forgot about it. But then it actually got nominated for best hip hop album.
Wow.
So then I ended up going to the award ceremony with a Mao pin on.
Nice.
Yeah. So then because it got nominated, like certain music blogs and like media outlets kind of had to like half-ass way, like
Yeah,
give me some coverage. So then that's when and then
yeah.
they asked like a lot of questions like, well, is it hypocritical that you're a communist but you're also selling music? I'm like, well, I'm not making anyone buy it. My music's free online. I'm just selling CDs for people who want to keep a copy and so I can break even. And like this is just me myself. Who am I exploiting?
Yeah,
Yeah. So then I mean, and
yeah,
like this sort of like simple like buying and selling existed long before capitalism ever existed. And plus, I live in a capitalist society, so like yeah, I got a few of those interviews, and then a lot more stupid comments like, "Oh, if you love communism so much, why don't you move to like I don't know, just name any country, like mostly mainland China, but then also like North Korea or whatever." So then during this time, I also started running a Chinese language YouTube channel called Shengu TV, Agitprop TV, and I just teach
yeah.
people about communism. But it's like kind of tiring doing it on my own, so I'm kind of like churning them out slowly but surely.
That's funny that there are people who say, "Oh, why don't you move to mainland China?" When in fact there are a lot of Taiwanese young people are moving to mainland China to study, to work,
To
and
find work, it's like people. The job market in Taiwan is shit right now.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I met a Taiwanese doctor who was trained in mainland China. He graduated from a medical school in Beijing. He was in LA when I met him, and he told me he would have preferred to stay in Beijing if he was allowed to practice, because at that time, I think 2018 or 2017 when I met him, at that time it was difficult for, say, like somebody who doesn't have like a Chinese passport or Chinese resident permit to work on mainland, but they just changed the rules like a year
Yeah,
ago.
now it's
So by
really easy. There's no
go ahead.
special documents needed nowadays.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So then there's that, and then I mean a lot of it is there is not much conscious rap or like political hip hop in Taiwan. But the stuff that does exist is just very liberal and just it's very cringy, and it just leaves a lot to be desired.
Do you have an example of the cringe?
Do you have an example?
No, no. I'm just asking you something that anybody you have in mind in
Well,
particular.
well, I guess no one in Taiwan's really listening to this, so fuck it. There's this guy named Duaki. 大只, like,
Uh huh.
yeah, I respected him a lot when I was younger, even though I didn't really necessarily agree with all of his views. But his political views have just stagnated and just stayed the same for the past 10 years, and he's just always repeating Western propaganda. And then like he tried to start rapping in English, and he started working with like American rappers like Talib Kweli and like Mos Def. No, did he work with Mos Def? I'm not sure. He worked with Prodigy from Mobb Deep and Nas. Like there was this one song that he made for a mixtape like 10 years ago, like protesting, like supporting the Dalai Lama,
Mm-hmm.
and then criticizing then Taiwan leader Ma Ying-jeou for not being supportive of the Dalai Lama when he visited, and he's saying that like, oh, because Ma Ying-jeou was like a communist puppet, then like the only person that he would let go to Taiwan, like allow into Taiwan and support openly, would be Fidel Castro. And I'm just like, fuck you, like, do you know anything about Fidel Castro? And then it's just like a lot of that stuff is just it doesn't take any like sort of actual studying to reach those conclusions, because all you have to do is just turn on a TV and just keep absorbing and absorbing and absorbing. But then like people think that what really pisses me off is people are like, oh, you guys are like so similar because you guys both rap about politics. And that really annoys me, and I hope that I can raise people's consciousness enough to the point where they recognize like the differences and how like it's not all the same. And like I put a lot more into studying these things than him, and I'm also not on the DPP's payroll, so there's that.
Yeah, just wearing a Che Guevara shirt doesn't make you progressive.
Well, he doesn't even do that. He doesn't wear a Che Guevara shirt, but then he'll talk about like supporting Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah, because that's hip now. That's acceptable now.
Yeah, but then like he clearly demonstrates that he knows nothing about them. But then he'll also like sing praises to the Dalai Lama, and then when Trump got elected, he made a song against Trump. Like the lyrics are so stupid because he's saying like Trump is bad because he says that NATO is a thing of the past, and I'm like, okay, Trump. Okay, you know what? Trump said that stuff for all the wrong reasons, but he's right. Fuck NATO, and if you like NATO, you're stupid. Either that or you're a class enemy, but you're not a class enemy. You're just stupid. It's like I can understand if like a billionaire is against Kim Jong-un, for example.
Uh-huh.
Like you're not stupid if you're like if you're a billionaire and you're against like Stalin. But if you're not like of the bourgeois class and you like NATO, something is wrong with you. And it may not entirely be your fault, because yes, we live in a society and there's the the state ideological apparatus, and there's a superstructure. But if you want to brand yourself as a conscious rapper, I think you really should be doing more studying and like more investigating, and not just regurgitating like everything the mainstream says. I'm not saying that just because something is not mainstream, it's incorrect. It's correct, or if it's mainstream, it's automatically incorrect. So that's another part of my motivation to do what I do, and it's also probably another reason why like I might not be too popular in Taiwan, because like the person I just mentioned is highly respected in Taiwan's hip hop community. Actually, if it weren't for him, MC Hotdog probably wouldn't have become famous, because MC Hotdog was like this like really nerdy like kid with no confidence, but he met this guy, and this guy just kind of pushed him into becoming like more of like a rapper type of guy, have more confidence. And he also did a lot of like promotion for him and stuff like that. So I mean, he's not all bad, but then when it comes to his political views and some of his more recent career moves, it's just very cringy and leaves a lot to be desired. And I guess part of why I feel so strongly about this is because this is a guy who I respected as a kid when I first started listening to Chinese hip hop. What else? What else is there you want to ask about, like the political development, or the sort of music climate, or anything specifically in the album that you heard that you want to ask about?
Actually, whatever you want to talk about, man. This is freestyle. What, like anything you want, anything else you want to cover?
Well, I thought I would pass it back to you and see like if there's anything you want to cover, because
For me personally, I just really wanted to understand your background, your upbringing, and how you develop your political consciousness, and because it is rare. Like
did you realize one of the songs in the video, Meng Dream, how it talked about like just like the American dream and stuff like that?
it's part of the new video, a single spark.
Yeah. It's part of the single spark. There's the
So what?
it's the fourth song.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna splice a little bit of this song in the beginning as an intro, and then include longer version of it at the end. Is that cool with you?
Yeah, you can pick any song, not just that, because I wanted to talk about the topic in that song, so I guess it would be relevant if it was spliced in somewhere.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I mean, that song that was also part of my political development. Right after I graduated from college, my family went through a foreclosure.
Oh wow, this is around 2009.
2015. Yeah, 2015. Yeah, and like during my all like 4 years of my college, my family was going through like very tough financial times. Like my dad's like business wasn't doing too well, and there was also like some very poor financial decisions on his part, like in the past, that just really all added up and just made everything like just shit hit the fan. But it was those 4 years where I like just really realized how you know, you say that this is a free country or whatever, but then like you're also worrying about whether or not you have a place to stay tomorrow. And like we're by far like not like the poorest in this country. I mean, I had a pretty like petty bourgeois upbringing. I had a pretty like well off upbringing and stuff. But then this could even happen to like us. Imagine like, you know, the really poor people.
Yeah.
So then that happened. So then it was a lot of like disillusionment with because the thing is, I think in Taiwan, look, the idea of the American dream is still well and alive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a long time, like it was still kind of alive in the U.S. if you came from like a well off enough background. Like if you were an immigrant from like a well off like environment and you already had some money, you could just kind of there was like hard work, but it was also like money to be made.
Yeah.
That was more available to more people than now. And it's just after like the recession and all of that, and then there was also like things like Bernie Sanders becoming more popular, just really gets really gets all that stuff really got me to read more and understand things more. And then like I was kind of on the Bernie train in like 2015, but then a few months afterwards I read more. I'm like, okay, he's selling like a bunch of good sounding things that he's not going to be able to carry out even if he wanted to.
Yeah, we live in U.S. after all.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So then there's
Yeah, I
that,
mean,
and then other songs.
like what Bernie Sanders platform would just be kind of standard in any like European countries, Western, Northwestern European countries, but in United States somehow he's a firebrand
Yeah, it's
communist, you
pretty funny.
know.
And then like and then like you have people saying that the Norwegian states are and the Nordic states are socialist and that's social
Yeah,
democracy. There's all that, and these are all misconceptions that I want to counter. I mean, I'm only one voice, and I'm definitely not going to get a mainstream platform. But and then like because I ended up going on another podcast on Pearls of the Round Table a few months ago, I started getting a Western audience. I actually sold let me pull up a good chunk of my sales from this album came from not from like the Sinosphere, but from the West. I sold 68 albums to countries like the US, the Netherlands, Sweden, Finland, Germany, Ireland, Canada, Romania, Spain. Right now I'm thinking since I have a Western audience, for my next album, I might do something where it's mostly in English. I might have a few songs that are still in Chinese. I don't want to just stop rapping in Chinese altogether. And then I might have a song or two with, like, for example, like a verse in English, a verse in Chinese, or like a hook in Chinese, or something along those lines. And I think that I can grow a bigger audience. And I really hate to say this, but the reality is in Taiwan, if you're taken seriously by Westerners, then they're going to take you more seriously.
yes.
So then that's kind
Yeah.
of my next step, I think. But right now I'm back in school and I just like finished my previous album, so I'm just taking it a little bit easy. But eventually that thirst is gonna come back because nothing feels better than releasing something after months of work and then just
Yeah.
seeing people like it. Interestingly enough, I say months
Yeah.
of work, but I really procrastinated with my previous album, like the 星星之火. I recorded it all and mixed it, like did the post production and like did all the graphic design and stuff in 1 week. So that explains what.
I I can relate. I'm a big time procrastinator too. You know, I always put things to the last minute and get it done in like a couple of days.
Yeah,
So
I did
I
that
understand.
with this album, which is why I wanted it to be longer, but then I really just ran out of steam. And I wanted to release the album before I left Taiwan and have it like just like up on the market and everything for people to buy and for people to listen to.
Well, I hope you get some exposure through this podcast, and for everyone who's interested to check out Xiangyu's music, we're gonna have more of his music coming up at the outro, and I'm gonna put the links to his YouTube videos in our show notes. So please go check it out. It's definitely interesting. I highly recommend.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anything else you want to promote or talk
Not
about?
really. If you want to if you want to just follow me on social media, my Twitter is at comrade Xiangyu. So comrade and then XIANGYU. My Instagram is the same. My Facebook page is in Chinese, so I guess if you really cared, you can find the link to it on my Twitter. And yeah, thank you.
I will put I will put all those links in our show notes so people can access them. It will be on show notes on all the platform on Patreon, Podbean, iTunes. You'll be and YouTube, everything. So
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, and
yeah,
thanks for having me on.
yeah. Thank you. That was a pleasure. We don't get a Taiwanese Marxist rapper on the show every day, so appreciate it.
Yeah. And I think now I'm pretty bad at freestyling because my train of thought is like all over the place with this. And yeah, and you're a little bit too lenient with me on that. So sorry if this episode had a lot of like tangents and
Good. People like that.
but hopefully, yeah, but hopefully you guys find this entertaining if you're like just on a long drive or whatever. Hopefully it provided some sort of entertainment and you learned a thing or two. Yeah.
And definitely stay for the longer version of Xiangyu's latest album, Single Spark, 星星之火. And you can find me on Twitter at Carl Za. That's just my name. So Carl spelled with a C, Carl. My last name, Zha. That's zebra, Z as in zebra, H as in Henry, A as in Apple. Same thing on Facebook, or just Google my name, Carl Za, and you will find my podcast on Patreon. It will be the second link from the top, I believe. It will be the Silk and Steel podcast. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you soon.
All right, solidarity forever. Bye.